Hello everyone and welcome to my talk today, which is for the virtual conference Online Education Teaching in a Time of Change. My name is Cory and I'm co-DOE for our new engineering curriculum at the University of Exeter, which is called E21. I'll be talking today about blended gold standard project-based learning and the development of 21st century skills, and talking about how it's agile and it might be a good teaching style for future online delivery. And I'll be using a module called Entrepreneurship 1 as my in my examples. And Avalon Cory will be presenting on another video, and she'll be elaborating on another one of our first year modules, which is on lo-fi prototyping and how she approached synchronous and asynchronous teaching during the pandemic. So check out her presentation. It's called Developing Student Confidence in Online Lo-fi Prototyping Through an Online IDEO Design Sprint. So just to give a bit of an introduction, a summary, I'm going to start with an introduction, a bit about me, and then give a bit more background about gold standard project-based learning, just for those of you who are not familiar with it. Talk a bit about our blended approach, the kind of plan that we started with, our pivot to online, and then the lessons that we learned and our potential updates for 21-22. So just a bit about me then. In my research life before I moved more into education, I was a research associate in forensic injury biomechanics at Cardiff University, and we used to mock up crime scenes before motion analysis of balcony falls, things like that, which is what you can see there. And this is actually us simulating somebody falling over a balcony using our boss as a volunteer. So that was a fun day at work, and there's lots of other things that you can apply injury analysis and prevention to. For example, when I worked at Arup, we looked at optimizing tier design for the rope maker building in London to reduce fall injury potential. I also worked in Cory Scientific Limited as managing director, and this is where I started my kind of entrepreneurship journey, which will link into what I talk about later. Where we use laser scanning and architectural modelling for visualisation, reconstructed scenes for analysing injury potential, and we basically were trying to work out most of the time what the potential cause of death was when the forensic scientists couldn't quite work it out and they wanted some kind of engineering input in terms of the injury biomechanics. So where I am now, I'm a senior lecturer in engineering and entrepreneurship, and my plan and my hope is that I'm going to create some value and impact in education. So I wanted to use this example to kind of illustrate how I moved to different establishments and seized opportunities, took risks. So how I developed my 21st century skills, because that's what I'll be talking about today. Excuse me. And how students also need to, during the fourth industrial revolution, really focus on these 21st century skills, because there'll be a lot of changes in their career like I had, but even more than that. They need to be very resilient and embrace challenge and really commit to that kind of lifelong learning. So graduates on this E21, this new E21 curriculum in engineering need to be very independent. We're trying to bring out their kind of 21st century skills. They're very imaginative, the ones that have been through this process already, and they really are developing that entrepreneurial mindset. We launched in the pandemic in September 2020 with the integration of 2 modules, one 15, one 30 credit module, really trying to push that kind of 21st century skills development through that process. And this is to work towards their MNG year. So in their first and second year, obviously there's a lot more I could explain, but because I haven't got along, I'll just say in summary, for their first and second year, they go through the gold standard PBL to prepare them. And then in the third and fourth year, they move into this real research-led learning. And this culminates in a great conference for our students in terms of them showcasing their work and linking in with people from industry also. So a bit more background to gold standard project-based learning. So the reason obviously that we have developed this style of education is because we are trying to prepare our students to use technologies that don't currently exist and solve, as we all know, these kind of unknown problems that will be rapidly created in the future with everything that's happening at the moment in terms of the fourth industrial revolution, and also obviously the pandemic and the changes that that's brought about in terms of the digital kind of advancement of everything. So there's a real shift towards these challenges based on authentic and emerging situations, active learning, so experiential, active learning, and multimedia communication, which is a big part of Entrepreneurship 1. And students really need to understand that they've got to learn how to learn, but also learn how to unlearn, because they'll need to pick up so many new skills at such a rapid pace. So this is a really useful publication, if you haven't heard of it, the Future of University Thought Book. And as it says there, it's a lot of experts put into it to try and kind of think about where we're going to be in the future. And they presented this at a conference, and I was really interested in this part, obviously, because it relates to PBL, where we've got this real shift towards projects, challenges, and facilitators, and learning in teams. So that's the sort of thing that we're trying to take forward at the University of Exeter. These are the 7 essential elements to gold standard project-based learning. I'm going to go through those in a later slide. But EntreComp is another thing that we've used, which is the Entrepreneurship Competence Framework. We've got 3 competence areas and 15 competencies. And using these 2 together is unique to Exeter, and it works really well. I'll explain a little bit more about that as I go. But what we're trying to do is really revive that excitement for learning, and, you know, think about giving them challenges, giving them problems, and getting the students really independent and getting them really in the driving seat of their own journey, their own learning journey. So we start with this real world driving question, and that's aligned obviously to the AHEP standards that we have in engineering. And we have a rigorous 10-week project which has a lot of Q&As and resources that they need to go through on ELI, and then applying those to their projects. And students are really facilitated to make their own decisions. This is a really important part of gold standard project-based learning. I'm a real advocate of this type of facilitation rather than teaching, because I think it empowers students and really helps them to build their confidence. And in terms of reflection, so this really helps them to identify issues and achievements, and kind of as they go through the problem solving process. And we often will have like a midway assessment where they'll reflect on, and we'll give them feedback, and then we'll kind of have a session, a PBL support session where we go through those sorts of things. And they have a lot of peer and self-assessment, and obviously feedback from the facilitators and lecturers. And this is really important for continuous improvement. In Entrepreneurship 1, our assessments are very public, as is required in gold standard PBL. And we've already had a lot of multimedia assessments. So we used storyboards and videos in this module. We used websites and wireframes websites in another entrepreneurship module. And Avalon will tell you more about what she's used in her other modules as well. And this 21st century skills development is really important as well, which I've already talked about. It's really important that they go through this process of critical thinking and problem solving, and also developing leadership skills, which they do as part of their projects. They're really collaborating, and in this case they have to collaborate online. And the self-management is a really challenging part for students. They find that, you know, particularly difficult. So this was our plan then. When we started, what we really wanted to do was have, you know, this is what we did the year before the pandemic, was we had this kind of really incredibly engaging on-site project launch where we had people from industry, demonstrating with LiDAR scanners on site, and so students were like really interacting with that equipment, and they were, you know, looking at the screens and looking at things that were being captured on campus, which they absolutely loved. And we also had VR headsets on site, so students were you know, putting the headsets on, and they absolutely loved it because they were seeing you know, Google Earth, and they were kind of making links between the LiDAR scanners and the VR headsets. And we had technical specialists and entrepreneurs that they were talking to whilst they were going through that. So it was a really engaging part of it, an interactive part of it. We had always planned to use Mural for project planning and team building, so that continued. And emotional intelligence and resilience workshops are really important for the team, the collaboration side of things. And we had innovation workshops with our entrepreneurs in residence, and Lego Serious Play workshops, which is again very physical, interactive activity. And they were to do their final team promo pitch as a video presentation, which we were planning to do in person. So when we had to pivot online, obviously this is a really important aspect of you know, the decisions that we were trying to make, is how are we going to take this kind of authenticity from this on-site project launch and engage students with these technical specialists. So that's a picture of our entrepreneur in residence there, Nick, and what we really wanted to do is kind of break down those barriers by having quite an informal introductory video which we put on the VLE, and there was also one for me where I was kind of out riding my bike and Nick was in his van on site doing LiDAR scanning. So we really wanted to instantly make students feel kind of relaxed when they were talking to us when they eventually met us, by putting these videos on the VLE. And Nick took his LiDAR scanner on site somewhere, and he did this incredible video where he was talking about, you know, how you scan coastal areas, and it was very technical and very engaging. And even though it wasn't on site with the students, it was on a site, so that really made a massive difference. And we had a Q&A for this activity, which was absolutely incredible. We had a student who's created a recent startup, so he was very similar experience to the students themselves, this entrepreneur in residence, Nick Russell. And you know, we made sure we carried on this kind of flat hierarchy startup atmosphere. It was very casual. We tried to make it, you know, not formal at all. And the students really got into it. The entrepreneur in residence and the student startup person were talking to each other, and they were getting really excited about some of the ideas that the students were putting forward. I think we had about 140 students and about 40 questions, and some of them were turning their cameras on and asking them live, and some of them were asking in the chat. And I really like that side of things that's kind of really different, is that they can engage in the chat and they can engage live, so those students are not as confident, have got that kind of access, and that's something I'd like to take forward. So yeah, it was very engaging, and the students are really starting to build that kind of online community. So Lego Serious Play was another really physical kind of interactive hands-on workshop, and the pivot for that was, you know, challenging as well. We had 250 students in really large groups. I think we had groups of 8. So we put them in different breakout rooms in different sections, and we had them on in synchronous sessions on Zoom, and they were using Mural to upload their Lego Serious Play models to, and they were presenting to each other in these breakout rooms and then coming into the main rooms and presenting to everybody. And this was an incredibly rewarding experience, but also very challenging. We had to send the kits out in advance to students. Some of them were coming to the UK, some of them were still international, so trying to manage that was quite challenging. We had 30 breakout rooms in Zoom, 90 mural boards, 6 Lego Serious Play facilitators, and 12 cameras all in one session. And we basically went through those sessions back to back, and in a whole day, it was like 6 hours, practical team collaboration interaction, and that was all captured on mural boards. It was really fun. Everyone enjoyed it. The students loved it. They really got to know each other. They really started to focus on the problem that they were trying to solve. It made them, like, when they talk about the Lego rather than themselves, it really breaks down that barrier where they're lacking in confidence, and that worked brilliantly well. And the communication and collaboration that they learned from the emotional intelligence workshops, which I could talk about a bit more, but obviously there's not too much time in this video. So basically they were just taught how to kind of understand their own strengths and weaknesses, and how to draw the best things out of others. So they were able to apply that in this kind of more collaborative, interactive workshop, and that was incredible. Really amazing experience. Everybody was so excited by the end of that. So in terms of kind of student feedback and lessons, I mean, students do respond on the whole really well to these types of gold standard project-based learning modules, and this is the entrepreneurship one. And they like that they have to solve real world problems. They understand that they're trying to develop this kind of entrepreneurship skill set in Entrecomp, and some students find it very challenging because you have to do a lot of they have to do a lot of research, and it's very kind of independent, and some students struggle with that, especially first years when they're not used to that style of learning from school. And the students fed back directly that it really helped them to get to know people on their course because it was so interactive, and it was, some said, it was quite hard to complete online, which of course it would be because it's a group project. But I think in terms of how that project worked online, we learned so much from that experience, and they enjoyed the interaction with staff. This is just a little graph that, or one of the graphs for the three areas in Entrecomp, just to show the way that we assessed on an online self-assessed survey students' kind of own perception of how they would rate their competence and be confident to do that on their CV. And you can see from the beginning of the first year to the end of the second year, the improvement in those competencies. And one student in particular just commented that, she really liked the fact that it allows students to find their own way. And the incredible thing is that all of the submissions, nearly all of the submissions, are completely unique. They're all different because their PBL driving question allows them to go in any direction, and they really enjoy that. So in terms of engagement on the VLE pages, we're about 40 to 50%, which is kind of about the average. And we really would like to simplify the content. And some feedback we've had was that there was just too much information on the LE page. We're going to really try and simplify that and not have so much asynchronous lectures on there, and just really pick out the most important ones, and make sure we're kind of consistent across the board on these gold standard project-based learning VLE pages. The students said that they prefer the week by week tile in project-based learning. Sometimes the project spans more than 1 week, and because we've got it set out by kind of the project stages, they found that a bit confusing. We did have a table, as I've shown here at the beginning, to show them kind of what they needed to complete, whether it was on Ellie or whether it was on Zoom, at the beginning of each of those weeks. But we're going to be having to look at how to structure our BLE page to make it more similar to some of the other modules that were all week by week. And students said that they didn't want us to create peer-to-peer discussion on Yammer, which we thought would be quite useful because we can ask them questions and poll what they would like to discuss in their Q&As and do some preparation for the Q&As. But they said they much prefer to talk on their own on WhatsApp. So that was an important thing to take back from that experience. In terms of kind of further lessons then, this is a very robust and agile mode of learning, and it when we did it in full online and we pivoted from blended to full online, we had similar feedback scores from the kind of face-to-face blended approach we had before. And LE pages, as I said before, needed some updates, but they were high quality, interactive, and they were very flexible. They could pivot from one to the other. the academic team were absolutely fundamental in this. The level of 21st century skills that they had and how adaptable they were was key, and I think that's what made it work so well. There are some aspects of this pivot online that we're definitely going to review in a bit more detail and try and make sure that there's a smoother transition if we have to go to full online again in September. And there's a real potential for this type of learning to be taken forward as CPD for developing 21st century skills. In terms of lessons then, I really think that it's so important to reduce barriers and create that less formal hierarchy with that startup culture that I discussed. We need to improve the VLE page. And this is just something that I think everybody has picked up over the last year, is it's really important to prepare well for these synchronous activities, make sure students have kind of meeting norms, agenda and timing, so they know what they're doing throughout the process of the session, and clear definition of roles for staff. So who's going to move students in and out of breakout rooms, who's going to manage the chat function, and we always know we need those very important contingency plans. So thank you very much. Please do get in contact if you have any questions.